From museum hauntings to hiding behind trees, there have been way too many Slenderman sightings that we must not ignore. Here are your top 10 unsettling Slenderman urban legends that are too real to ignore. He was first created by Eric Knudsen in the Something Awful forums, and he eventually gained popularity on other internet forums where people began to make up stories about him. Slenderman's shtick is that he stalks people, possesses them, and gets them to commit deeds for him, such as, killing other people. This is purely a fictional character. Or is it? In our number 10 spot, we have the Science Museum. This storyteller had read all about the Slenderman and couldn't stop thinking about him on a day trip to the Science Museum. Is he real? He seems so real. This girl has been known to have seen spirits in her past, and she wondered if maybe the Slenderman was just a demon that haunted people. A tall, pale demon. She was walking around the museum until she got to the space section. The museum was quite empty that day, and so she found herself alone. She went through a tunnel that is supposed to make you feel like you're looking at the night sky. She looked up, and in less than a few seconds, she suddenly became very aware that she was not alone. In the corner of her eye, she saw a tall man just hiding in the corner of the room. She got completely spooked that she tried not to move. She started to hear a weird sound, like a growling sound coming from where he was, and tears began to float down her face. She felt him walking close to her. She wanted to run for her life, but she felt frozen with fear. When all of a sudden, a young boy wearing a Minion shirt walked in, followed by his mother pushing a stroller. They made no indication of seeing something weird, and so the storyteller quickly turned in the direction that the Slenderman was and saw that he had vanished. She decided to go home and never read anything about the Slenderman ever again. Makes sense. In our number 9 spot, we have the opened door. This Reddit user was up all night reading posts about the Slenderman. Yep, he got sucked into the Slenderman phenomena and was reading people's seemingly real-life encounters with the mystical creature. He thought to himself, is he real? He can't be real, there's no way. He hadn't noticed that he had been reading posts until 5 AM. It was time for work and he hadn't slept at all. He decided to call in sick. He then went about his day and went for a walk when he saw a pale shadow behind a tree. He looked closer and it was gone. He got a little spooked and went home quickly and locked the door. Then that night he went to sleep and woke up the next morning to find that his front door was unlocked. He looked at his security footage and at 3:33 AM his front door opened and nobody went in. He got completely spooked obviously and decided that he would never read anything Slenderman ever again. Well, that's pretty wild. Why is it always 3:33 AM? In our number 8 spot we have the grandfather's cottage. This woman and her husband lived in a place that was going through a heat wave, so she decided to go up to her grandfather's cottage to get away from the heat. She had heard of the Slenderman stories. In fact, her husband made fun of her for thinking that they were real. He even joked about Slenderman being at the cottage that they were going to. As they roll up to the cottage, she notices a few things are off. Some scratch marks on the house that weren't there last year, and there were half-eaten rats nailed to the wall. What? Pretty messed up. Throughout the one night that she stayed there, her and her husband hear creepy laughing and someone saying, "Come out to play with me." And they wake up to find a deer head on the front porch. Her husband, now being as creeped out by this as her, helps her pack up their stuff and they leave. She remembers that the trees have cameras in them to monitor the house. She looks through the footage only to find a note written on the house that says, "Goodbye, thanks for playing." And then in the corner, she sees a tall, thin man hunched over and showing his vampire teeth in a creepy smile. Needless to say, she never returned to that cottage. In our number 7 spot, we have the Scream. 4 friends decided to go on a camping trip. They were having fun doing all the regular camping activities until one night when they were around the campfire, they noticed their friend went missing. They thought he was just pranking them, but when they flashed their flashlight at a tree in the forest, they saw a really tall figure run behind a tree. They were really beginning to get spooked, and so they decided to go to their tent and try to sleep and wait for their friend to return. In the middle of the night, the 3 friends heard footsteps approaching their tent, and one of them said, "Nice try, but we know it is you." There was silence. No response. Until suddenly a deafening scream that was so loud it shook their tent. The scream went on, and yep, they thought they were going to die, until eventually it started to fade. They waited until sunrise before they bolted out of the tent and into the car. They had a feeling that they would never see their friend alive again, and they were right. As they were driving away, they saw what they thought was a log floating in the water, but upon closer inspection, it was their friend. Whoa, okay, well I will never go camping again. In our number 6 spot, we have the hallway occurrence. This Reddit user's family is the first to live in her house, so she really can't explain the events that have happened. When she was younger, she woke up in the middle of the night and saw a tall, dark figure outside of her door. It must have been about 7 feet tall and very skinny. She thought that it was just her dad trying to creep her out, so she called out, "Dad, stop it!" He was known to play pranks. The next morning, she asked him about it, and he had no idea what she was talking about. She could tell he was being genuine. She spoke with her sister, and apparently her sister had a similar experience. Then on another night, she felt breathing floating over her, and she didn't dare open her eyes to see what it was. But then not long after, she was walking out of her room and she saw an oval-shaped shadow quickly rush at her door and then disappear when it got to her room. That was the last she saw of it, but she's convinced it was the Slender Man. In our number 5 spot, we have behind the fridge. This storyteller was coming home from work, as he does every day, and decided to go into his fridge in his garage to grab a cold beverage. He grabbed a cold Arizona iced tea and had turned his back from the fridge when he heard it. A soft growl that was gradually getting louder. He turned around to find a tall, lanky man with long arms and a featureless face. His arms were so long they pretty much touched the floor. Its hands were black with an inky-like shine to them. He wanted to scream, but no sound was coming out. Finally, a small shriek left his body and he ran. That was the last he saw of it, but 2 days later he went back to the fridge in the garage and he saw 2 handprints on it. Black ones. Dun, dun, dun. In our number 4 spot, we have outside the window. 3 young adults were hanging out at one of their houses, just sitting and chatting. The house was one of those places where you can't close the curtains, so 2 of the friends were talking while sometimes looking outside. Until one of the friends said, "Hey, what's that in the window over there?" Outside this friend's house was a motel. All of the windows of the motel were closed except one. Inside this window, it looked like a guy was swaying back and forth on something. One suggested that it actually looked like the Slender Man. They kept watching for about 15 minutes, the guy still swaying, and they started to think that maybe it was someone that had taken their own life. It didn't seem that way though, so they decided to sleep, and if whatever that was there wasn't there the next night, such as maybe if it was just the hotel room curtains of some sort, then they would be completely shook. It wasn't the hotel room, and it wasn't there the next night. In our number 3 spot, we have a rainy night visit. One night, it was really rainy, and outside there was a ton of fog. This storyteller was at home with her animals when her dog started acting really weird. Her cat followed suit. They would just stare down the hall and then jump and run as if they saw or heard something. She went to the bathroom and kept the door open, as the dog would normally scratch on the door if she closed it. She looked up at the bathroom mirror that allows you to see down the hall, and that's when she saw it. There was a tall, humanoid-like figure right outside the window. He was dark and the outdoors was dark, and so all she could make out was that it was incredibly thin and its head was so high it was probably about 7 feet tall. It was just standing there looking around. She walked closer to the window to get a good look at it when it turned to face her. Just then her neighbor came home and its headlights flashed in its direction. She watched it disappear. It's safe to say that she went around the house and she locked all the doors after that. She never saw the Slender Man ever again. In our number 2 spot, we have the tape. This Reddit user had heard all about the Slender Man. Tall, skinny, long arms. In fact, he had seen him. He knew what happened when you see the Slender Man, and it completely freaked him out that he actually took his family from their home and they stayed in a house on a mountain. One day the man was just wandering through the house inspecting things, and he came across these tapes where a doctor and a man were talking about seeing a long, tall man that was faceless. He got completely spooked, and so he turned off the tape, only to see in the corner of his eye in the window the Slender Man trying to come in. He shrieked, grabbed his family, and went into the car to drive away. When he woke up, It was just a dream. He looked around the room to see his daughter crying and talking to her mom. She said, "He was here, I swear. A really tall, faceless man." Dun dun dun. Super meta. I wish he continued with the story. I'm half hoping that he'll wake up again. A dream within a dream. In our number 1 spot, we have The Show. This Reddit user was asked to babysit for her friend. She was babysitting a young girl with curly blonde hair. Not long after putting the girl to bed, the girl came out of her room pale as a ghost and said that a monster was outside of her room. This Reddit user looked toward the backyard where she saw a person with long, skinny legs, very tall and gangly, step over the fence and run into the woods. She became very scared and reached for her phone to call the police when she realized that her phone was disconnected. The TV turned to a channel that was like a surveillance camera in the girl's room, and a voice spoke and said, "We're coming." The Reddit user picked up the girl and grabbed the fireplace poker and started running to find a place to hide. She put the girl in the closet and then opened the screen door to go outside. The Slenderman looked confused, as if he wasn't expecting that. The user ran at him and threw the poker in his head. The Slenderman fell to his knees and then onto the ground. Suddenly, lights were everywhere and people were screaming, "What did you do?" And this is when it dawned on her that she was on a prank reality show. She put the actor playing the Slenderman into a coma. She wasn't charged, as she didn't know, but the TV program was, of course. She has never been able to shake this off ever since, and for obvious reasons. That's insane. Do you think the Slenderman is real? Comment below and let me know your thoughts. I'm Melissa Melotti, your host. Follow me on Insta and YouTube at Melissa Melotti, and I will see you next time. Have a good day.